based on that. I'll explain this further. It can be as simple as if we say that we're going to be giving money for girls' education so that they become citizens equal with men, are we actually giving them the same classes? Do they have the same after-school activities? If there was a great program in Bolivia, they realized that girls didn't actually like to play football like the boys did. They wanted to play volleyball. But there were no volleyball nets being set up by the government. They only had the football fields. So eventually, the women figured this out, spoke up, and said, we want our girls to be able to play sports too, have a chance to feel empowered and strong. And they literally just looked at budget lines in the education system and said, we need equally, make sure this is equal. And they used their own experience. Another.
Maybe what I could ask information is, one of the most model country when it comes to gender budgeting is South Africa. How many are from Africa here? From this audience? Have you, maybe we should ask this. How many of your countries have formal gender budget? How many of these countries? Yeah, Philippines have. You're from what country, sir? Timor-Leste has budget. So some of us do not have formal gender budget things. So that's probably one legislative thing that we can share. What do you mean in addition to gender alignment? But what do we mean by gender budgeting could be one issue in itself?
That's a really important thing. On average, I believe somewhere around 40 countries have gender budgets, but that's a definite lack. And what's interesting about that is it could even go into early warning systems.
Yeah.
If you're going to have an early warning system that reaches both women and men,
that's a gender budget.
Are you doing it in formats that are applicable and reachable by both genders? Dealing with literacy rates, public forums, who has access to where, etc. So that's a really great tool that, what's nice about gender budgets is you can apply it from top down, but the local up influences exactly how the budget fits. So it's a policy level change, but the locals look at the budget and say this is what we need and this is what we don't need.
Excuse me. Yeah, I think what is happening, what is nice about her presentation is precisely broad topics that gives us ideas that where do we need policies and where do we need legislation. I'm just kind of stopping her for educative topics so that we could, Lucy, me?
Some real quick examples of where this could be applied are, so during increasing the economic resiliency of female-headed households, improving roads in rural areas, developing gender-sensitive early warning mechanisms and relief procedures, making sure that women's concerns are addressed as clearly as sanitation needs, health and hygiene needs, etc., and that goods aren't just, of course, handed out to the dominant male household. Ensuring equal access to energy sector technologies that mitigate the adverse effects of climate change. Also giving them economic and agricultural subsidies, in particular, giving women equal access to training and support for irrigation equipment, farm insurance, seed varieties, fertilizers, technical guidance, and treatment for plant diseases and pests. These are all very critical for food security as well as climate change. The gender-responsive budgeting model can be applied to any ministerial sector in a government. So you can work with the education system and say, we want to make sure that you are using a gender-responsive budget. Or you can work with the disaster or the environment or the water. Any ministry you want to, you can relate to and ask them to do this. And in many countries, that's how it starts, is with just a single ministry or two. Next slide, please. The third is securing women's legal rights to land, water,